Tonight, filth at the egg farm. It's enough to make you sick. And she told Congress it did.
I spent 12 hours in the ER.
I'm Katie Couric. Who is in charge of food safety in this country? When it comes to pizza, can you believe it? It depends on the topping. Just as healthcare reform is about to kick in, insurers find a huge loophole that could affect hundreds of thousands of children. And the battle inside the White House over the war in Afghanistan. Revelations from a new book.
From CBS News World Headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News with Katie Couric.
Good evening, everyone. The average American eats 250 eggs a year, and there are a few things we look for when we buy them. We check the date on the carton and open it up to see if any of the eggs are cracked. But the real problem is what we can't see, a problem made painfully clear when 2 Iowa farms recalled 500 million eggs last month after they were linked to a salmonella outbreak that made about 1,600 people sick. Today, the owners of those farms were called to Capitol Hill to explain some frankly disgusting safety violations. Here's congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes.
You swear or
For
affirm?
the first time since Americans started falling ill 4 months ago, the father and son who run Iowa's Wright County Egg said they are sorry.
We apologize to everyone who may have been sickened by eating our eggs.
But the apology fell flat with lawmakers.
You are a habitual violator of basic safety standards.
Who came armed with revolting new photos of the family's filthy, rodent and bug-filled hen houses.
How do you explain dead chickens in your hen-laying houses? The mice along the conveyor belt for the eggs.
But this here would not be acceptable.
The
Right.
DeCosters tried to pin the salmonella outbreak on feed coming into their farms. But the FDA says the facilities were so unsanitary, the contamination could have come from anywhere.
We are currently in the process of completely cleaning and disinfecting the entire mill from top to bottom.
And because Wright County Egg produces 2.4 million eggs a week, Americans are still getting sick a month after the massive recall.
Your whole body, head to toe, is in agony.
30-year-old Sarah Lewis was in and out of the hospital for weeks after eating a custard tart.
I was in fetal position for I don't even know how long.
77-year-old Carol Lobato, who nearly died, was unmoved by the DeCosters' belated apology.
Well, I would think with his past history, it probably doesn't mean very much.
She's referring to another salmonella outbreak that killed 9 people back in 1987. Remarkably, the DeCosters argued today that their operation is much cleaner now than it was back then, Katie.
All right, Nancy Cordes on Capitol Hill. Nancy, thank you. And later in this broadcast, we'll have a special investigation you won't want to miss. We'll show you the huge holes in the government's food safety net. Also on Capitol Hill, the last time Republicans took control of the House in 1994, they did it with their so-called contract with America. Now they're trying to take control again with something they're calling a pledge to America. It calls the present government, quote, arrogant and out of touch. They're pledging, among other things, to reduce the size of government, stop what they call job-killing tax hikes, and repeal and replace what they see as the government takeover of health care. Chip Reed is our White House correspondent. He's here in New York for a change tonight. And Chip, the Republicans are really throwing down the gauntlet on this. What are administration officials saying about it?
Well, Katie, the White House is calling it, quote, the same old failed special interest policies that created the economic crisis in the first place. If the Republicans were to take control of Congress and if they were able to pass this kind of plan, and that is a huge if, President Obama would veto it. But this Republican plan, we've got to understand, is really a campaign document. No one's really expecting it to become law as a total plan.
And I know earlier today the president was in Northern Virginia talking about health care reform, which, as you mentioned, the Republicans are threatening to repeal. Why was he revisiting this topic today when he's been so criticized for initially not focusing on the economy?
Well, Katie, he's trying to help Democrats who are being just hammered out on the campaign trail on health care reform. So today he highlighted a number of popular provisions of the bill that take effect tomorrow. For example, starting tomorrow, insurance companies will be barred from denying coverage to children because of pre-existing conditions. Insurance companies will also no longer be allowed allowed to put a lifetime limit on the amount of coverage, and children will be allowed to stay on their parents' insurance plans until their 26th birthday. And Katie, when he signed the bill 6 months ago, approval of health care reform was 37%. After talking about it a lot, it's still at 37%, hasn't gone up a bit.
All right, Chip Reed. Chip, thank you. It's nice to have you in New York. And it didn't take long. The insurance industry has already found a way around that pre-existing condition provision for children's policies. Don't sell any. And that could affect 500,000 Americans under the age of 18. Cheryl Atkinson has that story.
Auto technician Toby Serrano hoped healthcare reform would cure his family's insurance ills. Daughter Maria has a history of brain procedures as a young child, a pre-existing condition that's keeping her from getting affordable health insurance. But the family was filled with hope by this unqualified promise.
Starting in September, some of the worst abuses will be banned forever. No more discriminating against children with pre-existing conditions. Those days are over.
When health reform passed, it definitely saw a light at the end of the tunnel.
Now reality has set in. Insurers may be barred from refusing kids like Maria with pre-existing conditions, but some have found a way around that. Stop offering certain policies in the first place, the ones that cover a child instead of the whole family. Aetna, Anthem Blue Cross, and Cigna are among the companies announcing that as early as tomorrow, they'll stop selling child-only policies in many states. That's the very type of policy the Serranos were hoping to buy for Maria.
I feel bad for myself, but then I also think about everyone else.
It doesn't affect anyone who now has insurance, but it does impact the families of an estimated 500,000 children who might have wanted child-only policies. Now, nonprofits like this one in the Serranos' home state of Colorado worry they'll have to pick up the slack.
A new stress, I guess, from the more demand out there for those that are uninsured. We could find ourselves in trouble.
Some insurers say they'd rather lose the small market of child-only policies altogether than be forced to cover kids with pre-existing conditions.
They're going to have very, very high health care costs that are going to have to be borne out by everybody else who has health insurance. And that's a system that's simply not sustainable.
We asked the insurance lobby to provide their numbers and projections as to just how expensive it can be to cover children with pre-existing conditions, but they declined to provide any figures. Cheryl Atkinson, CBS News, Washington.
And for more on the story, you can go to our partner in health news, webmd.com, and search healthcare reform. While the president initiated healthcare reform, he inherited the war in Afghanistan. But now it's become his after making the decision to send thousands of additional troops with the ultimate goal of ending it. But according to a new book by journalist Bob Woodward, another battle's been raging behind the scenes. David Martin got an advance copy and has some of the highlights.
The title, Obama's Wars, seems to refer as much to the infighting among the president's closest advisors as to the fighting on the battlefield. National Security Advisor Jim Jones refers to political advisors like David Axelrod as the Politburo and the Mafia.
I think the frustration that everybody's feeling that there's no easy winning formula in Afghanistan is spreading in a negative way in the White House. People are sniping at each other. Who's to blame? Who's wrong?
The strategy review that resulted in sending 30,000 more troops to Afghanistan pitted a military which wanted more troops and more time against a commander-in-chief who wanted a speedy exit. General Petraeus is quoted as calling it a war we're in for the rest of our lives and probably our kids' lives. While the president tells Defense Secretary Gates and Secretary of State Clinton, "I'm not doing 10 years." Frustrated with the Pentagon's advice, the president turned to the country's most famous military figure, former Joint Chiefs Chairman and Secretary of State Colin Powell, who told him, just because the generals are unanimous doesn't make them right. Even after the 30,000 number was agreed upon, the Pentagon came back for more. Gates persuaded the president to give him authority to send in an additional 3,000 troops for critical missions such as medevac. The president insisted the surge troops start withdrawing by July 2011, saying we need to show some light at the end of the tunnel. The president told his military advisors, "We will not be having a conversation about how to do more in Afghanistan unless we're talking about how to draw down faster." Katie?
David Martin at the Pentagon. David, thanks very much. 41 days now till the midterm elections, and we want to take a look tonight at some of the critical contests in the battle for control of the Senate, races in which the Tea Party movement could have a big impact. 7 candidates backed by the Tea Party won the Republican nominations, and a CBS News election team analysis finds most of them have an even or better chance of winning in November. The nominees in Alaska and Utah are likely to keep the seats Republican. Rand Paul has the edge in Kentucky. It's a toss-up in Colorado, Florida, and Nevada. And right now, Christine O'Donnell is the underdog in a race that is still competitive in Delaware. Here in New York, the Tea Party helped political novice Carl Palladino win the Republican nomination for governor, and now it's put him within striking distance of Democrat Andrew Cuomo. In a new poll out today, Palladino trails Cuomo among likely voters by just 6 points. And Tea Partiers pick Palladino over Cuomo 4-1. Now, keep in mind, the Tea Party is not actually a political party. It's a movement with any number of leaders, including people like Sal Russo. Ben Tracy now on the man who's helped brew a revolution.
The Tea Party prides itself on its grassroots, a movement with no master. But when it comes to winning, 63-year-old Sal Russo may be the man behind the curtain.
We've got to get everybody on the right page that growing the government, spending money that we don't have, is the wrong answer.
Russo has been a Republican strategist since the 1970s. Now he heads the Tea Party Express, run out of this office in Sacramento, California.
The Tea Party Express and Mark Levin support common-sense conservative Christine O'Donnell.
Russo's group has produced more than 24 TV ads, joined forces with Tea Party favorite Sarah Palin, and organized 200 rallies.
And they're the ones who have managed to seize on the Tea Party momentum for the most fundraising success and political success.
In Alaska, Tea Party Express spent $600,000 to help unknown Joe Miller knock off incumbent Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. In Nevada, they took Sharon Angle from 5% in the polls to a now neck-and-neck race with Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. And last week, almost single-handedly helped Christine O'Donnell pull off a major upset in Delaware, defeating the moderate Republican.
Nobody gave any of these candidates a chance. Zero chance. And we turned them all into winners.
But in Delaware, O'Donnell is now trailing the Democrat by 16 points. A loss there in November could prevent Republicans from taking back the Senate.
60% of the people in the state don't think she's qualified to be their senator. Did you back the wrong candidate?
No, I don't think so. I think she's great.
That's because she calls herself a fiscal conservative, the only issue Russo says he cares about. But now his own spending is being questioned. His group has doled out more than $8 million, and more than half of that has gone to reimburse the political consulting firms run by Russo and his wife. Not uncommon in politics, but more fuel for an ugly rift with other Tea Partiers. They worry the Express is the Republican Party's attempt to co-opt their movement.
They're a top-down organization designed to make political expenditures based on what a small elite leadership team based out of a Republican consulting firm in Sacramento decides.
What do you make of the criticisms?
Well, I would put it in one of 3 categories. I mean, it's either ignorance, stupidity, or malice.
But as a proven winner, Russo no longer needs an invitation to the Tea Party. He's already crashed it. Ben Tracy, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And still ahead here on the CBS Evening News, the American spirit. She's out to change the shape of an entire city. But up next, food safety slipping through the cracks, a special CBS News investigation. Those tainted eggs we mentioned earlier have a lot of people asking, how do I know my food is safe? Government agencies are supposed to be regulating the food supply, but taken together, they make up an alphabet soup of oversight. A recipe, Chief Investigative Correspondent Armin Katayan reports, that can lead to confusion and contamination.
Estimates are 76 million Americans get sick from foodborne illnesses every year. 325,000 sick enough to end up in the hospital. Last year, the number of salmonella cases for one strain was 1/3 higher than a decade ago.
It's so frustrating to know that nothing ever gets done.
Jeff Almer's mother died 2 years ago after getting salmonella poisoning from peanut butter.
To find out it was something that could have been prevented you feel cheated, you feel angry.
Angry at a bewildering food safety system filled with gaps and overlaps. 15 federal agencies spending more than $2 billion a year to enforce at least 30 different laws. The key agencies, the USDA, which oversees meat and poultry, and the FDA, everything else.
It seems nobody bears any responsibility when things go bad.
Just check out a local grocery store where logic seems in short supply.
Take a look at this. Beef broth made in a plant regulated by the USDA, which inspects every day. But chicken broth made in a plant regulated by the FDA, which is inspected once every 5 years. In the frozen food aisle, cheese pizza is regulated by the FDA. Pepperoni pizza? Well, that's the USDA. The fish? Well, that's FDA, except one, catfish, that's USDA. And that USDA seal on a carton of eggs doesn't mean they're safe. It means they've been checked for size and shape.
The result, contaminated spinach from California, peanuts from Georgia, and last month, eggs from Iowa that sickened more than 1,600 people.
Multiple agencies really just are pointing fingers at each other rather than actually providing consumer protections.
Here's how that protection failed in Iowa. The FDA was supposed to inspect the hen houses, but never did. 50 feet away, the USDA inspected the packing facility every day, but was not allowed inside the hen house, where outside investigators later discovered an 8-foot pile of manure.
The USDA refused to speak to us on camera, but in a statement said this incident exemplifies the critical need to make significant improvements in the food safety system.
A bill to overhaul the entire food safety system has been held up by partisan bickering in the Senate for over a year.
How does that make any sense?
Only adding to Elmer's pain.
You know, people's lives hang in the balance on this bill.
As questions about the safety of what we eat only grow. Armin Katayan, CBS News, New York.
And there is a new food recall today. The makers of Similac are voluntarily recalling 5 million containers of powdered baby formula across the U.S., Guam, and the Caribbean. Some were found to contain insects. We'll be right back. 98 years after the Titanic disaster, we're still learning more about it. In a new book, the granddaughter of the ship's second officer claims 2 key blunders were to blame. Louise Patton writes that a crew member misunderstood a command and steered into the iceberg instead of away from it. Then the chairman of the White Star Line insisted the Titanic keep sailing instead of waiting for rescue ships, which may have caused it to sink faster, killing 1,500 people. Patton says her grandfather told no one but his family, fearing the information would ruin the company. There may also be a new take on a biblical story. Who can forget Charlton Heston's portrayal of Moses leading the Israelites out of slavery in Egypt by parting the Red Sea? New research suggests that could have happened naturally. Not in the Red Sea, but in the Nile Delta. Scientists have developed a computer model showing a 60-mile-an-hour wind blowing from the east could actually push back enough water to create a dry passage. And coming up next, she's leading the Battle of Vicksburg, a battle of the bulge. Finally tonight, it is no secret this country has a weight problem, and Mississippi has the dubious distinction of being the fattest state of all. 1 out of 3 adults who live there is obese. But a woman named Linda is out to change that, one step at a time. Kelly Kobayea has her story in tonight's American Spirit.
One Saturday a month, just after sunrise in Vicksburg, Mississippi, let's go! Linda Fondren gets ready for a walk. There we go! And nearly 100 friends, neighbors, and perfect strangers tag along.
Thank you for walking with us today.
Linda is on a mission to slim down her entire hometown.
People want to do better, so the challenge for them is get out there and do it.
You take the lead, you go.
Linda never struggled with her weight, but her sister Mary did. When she died of cancer, Linda vowed to help others like her sister to lead healthier lives.
Woo! Get it, ladies.
She began by opening a gym just for women.
Lift, cross.
Last fall, she challenged them and the rest of the community of nearly 25,000 to lose weight together. She began organizing walks and exercise classes.
You get to come together in an environment where people look like you, have the same problem as you, so you begin to not feel so bad about yourself and you think there's hope. Tap, tap.
In the past year, the city of Vicksburg has lost a combined 15,000 pounds, and there's no stopping them. Angie Wilkinson has dropped nearly 30 pounds. She now walks for her brother, who died of heart failure in March.
The day he died, he told me how proud he was because I stuck with it.
For Linda, the walks are just a warm-up.
Good job.
Every Saturday, entrance to her gym is free. She also leads a nutrition class, complete with a dietitian and a field trip to the grocery store.
That's where you're going to get a lot of different nutrients.
We're going to be an example, from the fattest to the fittest.
Hey, I like that!
And while this town has already lost thousands of pounds, they've gained a lot more in return.
You're great for continuing on.
Callie Kobiella, CBS News, Vicksburg, Mississippi.
And that's the CBS Evening News. I'm Katie Couric. Thanks for watching. Good night.
There we go, with the mayor.
That's a night's gonna be a good night.
Katie Couric, one-on-one with Timothy Geithner, tomorrow on the CBS Evening News.